So the first question I want to know is, like you say, you have been very fluent in Japanese, but when you were in the UK, why did you decide to learn Japanese instead of any other languages?
The basic reason is because I had planned to travel to Japan.
Okay.
I'd been traveling in Africa for a while and was kind of bored in England, and I thought, where can I go? And a friend said to me, come and visit me in Japan, come and stay for a while. So I planned to do that, spend a year saving money, and in that year I thought, well, I need to learn a bit of the language. Okay. So I took night classes 2 hours a week every Monday for 6 months.
2 hours a week?
Yeah, in preparation for traveling to Japan.
So before you go to Japan, how well is your Japanese?
Well, you know what, in England, I thought it was pretty good.
Okay.
But when I arrived in Japan, I realized it wasn't that good at all. I realized there was still a lot more to learn, and I didn't understand as much as I thought I would.
Okay.
I could, on the first day, I had to ask for instructions or directions in Japanese, and I could do that. But,
okay.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock arriving in Japan and finding things difficult to understand.
So when you are in Japan, is not outside, but how many hours a week do you study Japanese? I mean, in the classroom.
In Japan, for many years, I didn't study in a classroom at all.
Okay.
I studied with friends, Japanese friends, with language exchange, or we had kind of study groups with a couple of other foreign friends, and we'd go and try to talk to Japanese people and learn vocabulary. But there was not. I didn't study at a school until, well, I decided to take the Japanese proficiency test level 3 and then level 2.
Okay.
And for level 3, I didn't study at a school, but to get level 2, or to try and get level 2, I spent about a year at a language school, studying maybe twice a week in the mornings before work, 2 or 3 hours a time.
2 or 3 hours a week?
Maybe 4 or 5 a week. Yeah.
4 or 5 hours a week.
I can't actually remember how many hours it was per class.
But you are like immersed in the environment already.
Yeah, I was in Japan, so, at that stage my spoken Japanese was pretty good.
Okay. Which parts in language, like in the 4 skills, reading, writing, listening, speaking, which part is the most difficult to learn?
For me, reading and writing.
Reading and writing.
Because the Japanese script is, or the kanji, if you like, is difficult.
Okay.
I could, after my studies at the school, I could read a lot more, but it was still difficult to write. I could write the basic alphabets in hiragana and katakana. That was fine, but writing the kanji so they looked good and remembering how to write them was hard.
Okay. So writing is the most difficult to, and reading, of course.
Reading was a little bit easier.
How about grammar? Do you think the grammar is different?
I think Japanese grammar actually is not too difficult. Generally, there's fewer tenses than English. There are no articles. They don't use pronouns so often, so you can get an idea across fairly simply without using too much difficult grammar. But there is a lot of complex grammar, prepositions and particles. Wa, ga.
Yes.
And
for different people, you need to use different kinds of.
That's different, actually. That as well.
Okay.
The levels of politeness, keigo, the very polite language, which is also quite difficult to master.
Okay. Okay. So after you leave Japan, it was like 2-3 years ago.
About 3 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you think your Japanese now?
I'm losing it a little bit, I think. But when I go back to Japan, I find it's still there.
Okay.
I can use it in any situation I'm in.
Still maintain the same efficiency?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's exactly the same, but I can still survive very well.
Okay.
I'm still fairly fluent.
Okay.
When you don't use a language, it disappears from your brain, but when you come back and start to use it again, the words that you think you've forgotten, they're there, and you can access them. So. But I think it's important to keep using it a little bit every now and then. Otherwise, you might lose it.
Yeah. Okay. So now you say you've been learning some Mandarin Chinese with your kids.
Very informal. No classes.
No classes.
Some textbooks.
So you are going to use the same a strategy when learning Mandarin, or?
I thought it would work, but it hasn't. because I've been in Taiwan 3 years now, my Mandarin hasn't improved, whereas in Japan in the first 3 years my Japanese improved a lot.
Okay.
So it hasn't happened the same. Maybe it's because of the tonal aspect of the language.
Do you think the age has
Maybe
influenced a little bit?
Maybe when I went to Japan, I was in my early 20s.
Yeah, still the brain is young.
The brain was young.
Yeah.
Maybe it was more important to me at that stage.
Okay.
Now, when I moved to Taiwan, I was already married. I had kids. I'd had a stable job for a long time, so perhaps there wasn't internally as much urgency
Okay.
to learn
I see.
Chinese as there was for me to learn Japanese. I think age has something to do with it as well.
So, do you? It's a difficult to answer question, but how much level of like sense of achievements do you have when you learn Japanese? Like when you finish a course or something. When you let's say when you pass your level 2 for Japanese.
Oh, great sense of achievement. You know, studying over the year and the improvements I made in my kanji and the improvements I made in the kind of complex grammar that was necessary to know for the test. It was yeah. How can I say it felt great. It felt great to learn new things. I'd been there for a long time, and I was very fluent with the language, and it was but that was the next big challenge, and
yeah, I know that.
I did well, and passing the test was a great feeling.
So why didn't you like just go to like level
1? Because it wasn't probably necessary.
Okay.
I was thinking about it, but I looked at the textbooks, and there was really intricate grammar that wasn't used really in everyday conversation.
Okay.
And it seemed that level 2 was
Enough.
a high enough target, and it was enough. It helped me in my work. It helped me in my knowledge of the language. But level 1 would have almost been taking away from what I needed to do in everyday life.
Oh, okay.
It would have been stuff that
So it's not necessary.
It wasn't. I was fluent enough, and I felt like I got to
Good
a
enough to
level.
survive in the environment
survive,
already.
more than survive, to function very well.
Okay.
But I'm not sure how much level 1 would have helped me.
Okay. I see.
So after deciding that, I stopped studying.
I see.
My level of fluency and capability didn't go down, but my motivation to study did.
Okay. So finally, can you use a little bit Japanese to
Sure.
introduce yourself?
Sure. こんばんは。私はベンです。イギリス人です。51歳です。現在台湾に住んでいます。台湾高雄南の方に住んでいます。家族は4人です。私の奥さん、あとは子供2人。日本に住んでいました。24年ぐらい住んでいました。すごい楽しかったです。台湾の生活も楽しいです。でも日本、寂しい、懐かしい。戻りたくないけど、懐かしい。日本はとてもいい国です。以上。
ありがとうございます。I can still like a little bit try to figure out because my minor was Japanese, so I can understand like 50-60%.
Okay, pretty good.
It was okay. Yes, but thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Glad to be of service. Good luck with your course.